Is that age-appropriate sexual behavior? In this video that I made for parents, people who work with kids, and people who are trying to reparent their inner child, I'm going to break down age by age from 0 to 18, what is actual normal sexual behavior, and what you should say to kids to ensure that they have a healthy development, not just emotionally and physically, but also sexually. Because yes, sex is an omnipresent, integral, and it should be a healthy component of our development. And if you agree, keep watching.
This video right here is sponsored by Squarespace. And if you haven't heard by now, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for entrepreneurs to build and stand out online. And it's the easiest place to build a beautiful website, engage with your audience, sell anything from content to time to products. I mean, anything you want can be done on Squarespace. I mean, I'm telling you right now, you gotta go do it. You gotta go check it out. And if you haven't done so yet, go to squarespace.com/ShanBooty to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Again, that is squarespace.com/ShanBooty to get 10% off your first purchase of a website. I mean, go play around for free. Go check it out. Now, enjoy the rest of this video.
Let's start by talking about average firsts when it comes to sexual development. Now, a very important note here is a median is the number that occurs the most. An average is the mathematical middle number between all recorded possibilities. That to be said, it's very normal for these averages not to be your exact experience, but instead, it's a framework for what we can think of when we use the term normal. 0 to 2 is genital exploration, figuring out what is down there and how it feels when you touch it. 3 to 5 is curiosity about others' genitals and further exploration of one's own. And this is where all the questions come in. I have kids in this bracket, it's a lot of questions. 5 to 6 is the average age of someone's first romantic crush. 6 to 8 is cognitive curiosity about sex. This is where people start to really put all the information together, the emotional and the physical, then they decide what that means to them. 10 to 12 is the average age of first goal-driven masturbation. 12 to 13 for romantic relationships. 15 for kiss. 15 to 16 is fooling around, aka heavy petting or getting to the bases. First or second. 16 to 17 is the average age of first sexual debut. This is someone's first experience with full-blown sex, however that person defines it. And now we're going to just skip ahead in time a little bit and talk about your late 20s to your early 30s, because for many people, that is the first time they experience reduced shame around their sexuality. Which, in light of this, kind of makes no sense, right? How is it that we are sexual for 20, 30 years of our life, but it takes us that amount of time to truly embrace that part of ourselves? And the answer is, well, because no one else does. So we feel like we're not supposed to, or we're bad if we do that. Many people often experience suppression, shame, guilt, or silence around the topic, which can lead to some pretty damaging self-talk around normal sexual development. And on that note, I want to make one very, very strong point about what is not normal when it comes to sex, and that is any kind of non-consensual act. And sadly, every 68 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. 15% are 12 to 17. Now, some people might see this horrendous, heart-wrenching stat and think to themselves, well, that's precisely why kids have to be guarded against their sexuality or shielded from it. But stats actually show something very different. When people have confidence over their body, autonomy over their body, and they are able to label their body parts correctly, that signifies to abusers that they have a safe space to have these kinds of conversations. And because abusers thrive on secrets and shame and guilt in order to repeat the behavior, those who don't have that towards their sexual self are actually less likely to experience any type of sexual assault or trauma. As a sex educator, I often get asked, when do you have the talk and what are you supposed to say during this conversation? And now, as a mom of 2 myself, this is top of mind for me. And what I've come to realize through my research and through my lived experience parenting and being parented, the answer to when you have the talk is now. Like, you should have been having it, but now is a great time to start having it. In all seriousness, though, I think that this is a buildable conversation, a buildable dialogue, not dissimilar to math, right? You start off with the basics, 1 + 1. You don't start off with algebra and the theory of pi at age 2, because that concept is just going to miss them, and it's not applicable to their life at the time. So you think about it in those terms. What are they going through? What are they experiencing in their bodies? And how can I get ahead of that and give them the important information to not feel shell-shocked by their own lived experience, which can happen for many people, and also to feel empowered to ask questions and to be curious about this very fascinating part of their life. So we'll start with 2 to 3 years old, when it's a great time to start having these conversations, because they start talking and they want to talk about everything, especially what's this, what's that, why is this, why is that. This is the time for labeling: head, shoulders, knees, toes. And it should be head, shoulders, knees, toes, vulva, penis, scrotum, not privates or looty-loo or pee-pee. Again, going back to what I shared about preventative measures for sexual assault and the importance of feeling empowered to use medically accurate terms and to have a safe space to talk about these parts of yourself matter-of-factly, because it is a fact of your existence. It's also just a buildable, again, you're building the confidence with your kid that you can have these kinds of conversations, that you don't separate them from their sexual self, that you see them as one whole, and they can always come to you with the whole entirety of their existence. Another great reason why it's important to label around this age is because they're going to be interacting with that area. So you want to have specific language to address how, where, and when they should be interacting. And I'm talking about self-soothing. This isn't masturbation, but instead just genital exploration for comfort. The same way that you might, stroke your shoulder when you're bored, or just play with your hair or something. Without understanding of boundaries and what's appropriate, a 2 to 3 year old may very well just start to soothe and touch that area just because it feels good. These are important times to have conversations around what is private versus what's personal. It's not that you can't touch your body, because it is your body, but in a public setting, that's not appropriate. So you do that in your room and in the privacy of the bath when you're by yourself, and you don't touch other people's bodies, and no one can touch your body without consent. And there are specific people who can touch your body to wash or to clean or to examine, but in the specific way that you're touching, no one else should do that. This is also important to note because you want to start building the conversation around consent, so it becomes an integrated part of how they see people's responsibility to treat them and how they are responsible to treat other people. And then you're going to have conversations around nudity for much of the same reasons as the self-soothing, just because why not? It's much more I would love to be naked in front of you guys right now, but understanding that it's not appropriate in front of certain people, that you can do it in safe spaces, and that there's nothing wrong with your body. Your body is beautiful and incredible. But in our society, how we choose to do things is we cover up and we put on clothes when we are socializing. But when we have private moments, and please check in when those are, because it'll take some time to learn, you can let it all out. Right, you gotta put some clothes on, Munchkin. Brad can get a blanket at least. You could come and be with us, but you need a little shirt.
Popping in real quick to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. And if you haven't done so yet, go to squarespace.com right now and go play around. It's free. Go play around for a free trial. Go handle, build that brand, build that idea that I know you've been thinking about, that the world needs to hear. Go build it, and then come back and let me tell you some more about it. As a matter of fact, stay right here. Let me tell you a little bit more about Squarespace. Designed intelligence. Yes, I said that right. I'm talking about Blueprint AI. Whether you're a designer or not, Squarespace makes it so easy to design a website that is tailor-fit for your brand. I mean, it makes the whole process of making a website ridiculously easy. Trust me, I've tried on other platforms. It is not easy to design a website that reflects your brand. Well, Squarespace makes it really easy with design intelligence and the Blueprint AI. Let's talk about the payments and invoicing, okay? We gotta get the money. If you sell digital products, book clients, or even run an online store, Squarespace has all that built in. I'm telling you right now, it's so annoying if I'm a customer and I go to your website and I go to some payment option that is very confusing and kind of sketchy. I'm not gonna buy your product, but Squarespace has all of the recognizable places that you buy stuff regularly. So I'm telling you right now, it makes it so simple to sell anything, and it's built right in. No extra plugins, no extra fees, no extra stress. and get the money. Now let's talk about the visual design tools. I am a sucker for design. And this place has the most modern, seamless animations. I mean, it is so beautiful when you can just kind of plug and play and make your website look stunning. It's not only just functional, it's gonna look good too. And I'm telling you right now, Squarespace is the easiest place to do that. I've tried to build on other platforms and I tell you, it does not look good, but Squarespace makes it so easy. And so if you have been putting off putting out that website or putting out that idea, and you have been waiting because you want to find the right designer and the right person and put all this money into the website to make it look good, you need to stop. This is your sign. Go to squarespace.com/ShanBooty to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Again, that is squarespace.com/ShanBooty to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. And like I said, they do it so wonderful where you can go around and play and build the site without having to pay anything yet. So go play. And then when you're ready to get that discount, use the promo code.
Now, around 4 to 5, this is when the question starts. Where do babies come from? Which, of course, if I were a kid, I would be fascinated by that. Where did I come from? Where did you come from? Where did this mini sister come from? And I think at this stage, it's important to answer their questions matter-of-factly and not to editorialize or add any extra information, right? So if they ask, where do babies come from? They come from a mom's tummy, they come from the uterus, and they grow there, and after they are finished growing, they are pushed out of the vagina as a fully formed baby. And then that baby grows until one day they're your size. And then you keep growing until one day you're my size. And you just continue to answer these questions in a very matter-of-fact way. Most 4 to 5-year-olds don't have a very big attention span, so they're not going to take you all the way to the nth degree. But if they do, feel empowered to continue to answer it as factually as possible. Now, although this can feel challenging and strange because this is a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, I do think it's important to answer their questions head on and factually, and don't shy away from them, and do not provide them with misinformation. Because the truth is, you don't know what they actually have heard or what they may know by that point. They may have watched a video, overheard a conversation at school or at daycare, and at around that age, many kids start to experiment with the idea of playing house. And sometimes when you're playing house, kids flash each other, and kids might start to role play in different ways based on what their knowledge or experiences are in their home. So again, you want to arm your kid with the right information so they can enter into these scenarios, not being blindsided or blinded to the truth. All right, let's fast forward to age 5 to 8 or 6 to 8, and you're gonna start to see why it's important to have these conversations early on, because things can really speed up from this point on. At around age 8, many will experience early puberty, which is first instance of menstruation, erection, nocturnal emission, aka a wet dream. And so they're gonna have lots of questions. And if they were told that they can't have these kinds of questions very early on, this is where shame and guilt around sexuality can really start to begin. Because again, this is also the age where they start to have a better grasp of more nuanced topics, multidimensional, richer understanding that life isn't just the physical or the emotional or the spiritual, that often all of these things are delicately intertwined. So understanding their feelings around them, their understanding of it, is gonna really happen around these ages. So this is the time where you may wanna start to have more thorough conversations around sex that you actually guide. Rather than looking at it like, if they ask, I will tell, instead sitting down and reading a book about bodies and about touch. I've heard from many people that Grey's Anatomy is a really great TV show for this age group because it talks about the body and the physical in a very matter-of-fact way, and it also weaves in topics of romance and intimacy, because around 5 to 8 is when most people experience their first romantic crush. Let's talk about ages 9 to 12. This time period is so special and critical, and it can be very confusing because so much change is happening, both to many young people's external bodies and also to their internal world. And as they try to navigate their developing bodies, the different levels of maturity that people in their class are at, by this age group, many will be exposed to their first erotic content, aka porn. And by this age, they will either be in or see their friends start to begin romantic relationships. And so If people talk about when you should have the talk, like the real full birds and bees, let's talk about protection, let's talk about pleasure, let's talk about anatomy, let's talk about autonomy, let's talk about consent. When we're thinking of when to have that conversation, again, we should be building it up to the point where when we get to around 10 or 11, it doesn't feel jarring. But I think around this age is the sweet spot to really go there with kids. All right, let's get into the teenage years. Oh, you couldn't pay me to go back to this time period, age 13 to 15. A lot is going on and a lot is changing. And it feels like not only is your body and your internal world, but the world around you seems to completely shift. How people interact with you, how people see you, the grace that people have for you, the gaze that is bestowed upon you. Is bestowed the right word? I'm not sure. It's a lot of shifts. And again, if you're not having constant conversations around these, it can feel like a very isolating time where just existing can feel like you're doing the wrong thing. So most people will have pubescent bodies by this time, some form of breasts, testicles that are descended, and erections that are rising, facial hair, changing voice, normal menstruation, and sex drive. During the ages 10 to 12 is when goal-driven masturbation is discovered, like the concept of if I do this, then that happens. And by 13 to 15, masturbation may become a more normal part of someone's life, but in many cases, a very shameful, secret part of their life, which again is why conversation is so key. And furthermore, because if all these things are happening and you're all jammed together in the same age group, but there might be some who are well advanced and some who haven't even begun this journey, body image issues are a hot topic during this time period. Many seek to understand these changes through sexploration, and with raging hormones, this can become a very easy option for many. So sexploration could look like heavy petting, it could even look like sexting. And by around 14 or 15 years old, most kids will know one other person who has already had their sexual debut. The average age of first sexual debut is 17 years old. Some studies show that it's 16 for those with penises and 17 for those with vulvas. Now, this information is important regardless of your or your kids or an individual's sexual activity, because conversations around sex are starting to happen more frequently socially, awareness of who is and who isn't. And so whether or not they are, they aren't, they're aware of it. And what can happen is if they're not engaging or not interested or not there, they may start to feel subconscious about their lack of activity, and this is known as late bloomer's guilt. Late bloomer's guilt can impact people well into their 30s and beyond. So just because someone is not engaging with sex does not mean that they do not require conversations and consideration about their sexuality. If you found this video helpful, I really hope that you will appreciate the resource I put together, which is a guide to the sexual journey, age by age, just as I have shown. And in addition to this guide, I also have personal stories and anecdotes from people who reflected on that time period or who are currently parenting somebody during that time period. And if you're really, really keen, I'm also the teacher of Crash Course's Sex Ed series. And this is 15 episodes that are designed for young people to understand their sexual journey and their sexual selves. We dive into everything from vulvas to penises to masturbation, first sexual experiences, gender. So if you're interested, head on over to Crash Course's YouTube channel or refer a young person who's going through this very dynamic stage of their life.